I love Mark Wahlberg, but at the rate he's swinging, it would take him 3 days to draw that steel out. Hi, my name is Neil Kamimura. I'm a bladesmith, blacksmith from Hawaii. My business name is T Kamimura Blacksmith. It was established in 1932 Hilo from my great-grandfather. Today we're going to be looking at some blacksmithing scenes and some forging scenes of some movies, and we're going to see how real they are. Robert Downey Jr. has the best hammer swing. It looked like he had practiced. He was standing close to the anvil, and he's basically cold forging mild steel. So cold forging is not using heat to make it pliable like clay. Like he's actually just hitting steel cold. I don't quite understand, like, for one, why he has the forge lit in the back since he's cold forging it. I don't know what he was doing because the steel had no color to it. He was probably forging it at low heat, just kind of getting it to work. But he's cooling it off because it looks cool. They love the steam.
Careful.
It looks like he's holding a cup of tea because the crucible isn't hot. I personally don't think it would create a perfect ring. It would have to be like a wax mold that you cast from both sides with sand. It wouldn't just be pouring some hot tea on it and then it makes a perfect polished electronic ready ring. I would give this a 7 only because I like Iron Man.
You know what you are. What you're made of.
Oh boy, this is the one that I absolutely hate the most. It's not because I don't like Rambo. I love Rambo, but the problem is that, like, for one, that's a real shop. That's a shop that somebody's worked out of. So there was somebody in that vicinity that knows what they're doing. 2, Sylvester Stallone sells a Rambo knife every release, and he has knife maker friends. I'm friends with Jason Momoa. I would never let him do a forging scene like this in a million years. And he's using a ball peen hammer like out of a mechanic's chest. A ball peen hammer is a pound, you know, or maybe 12 ounces. Like my hammer's 4 pounds. And I'm pretty sure he likes to lift weights. I don't know why he wouldn't use a real hammer.
What you're made of.
See right there? He just keeps hitting it on the end. All he's doing is putting square hardy holes markings in the bottom of that thing. So here's your anvil, right? You have the horn. It's so sexy, right? You got this horn. You got this nice curve on the back, right? And then you have the center mass in the middle. Then there is a 1-inch square hardy hole. And that is meant for putting tools in there. You have to remember that the steel is hot and you're just banging on a square hole, you'll flip it over and you just have square hole marks all over it. I don't know why they don't tell him, hey buddy, hit in the center of the anvil. Like, why are you keep hitting it over the hole?
When you're pushed.
When you take steel at that temperature and you quench it in water, it microfractures. 5160 should be quenched in oil. But it doesn't need to be quenched because he's obviously not done forging it and didn't make anything but a pancake on the end of a leaf spring. 2, it's some magical water because he quenches it in water and he lifts it up and it's still hot, which that is also not realistic. Like, you put it in water, it would lose its heat immediately. Maybe he just sucks at forging so bad that it was so thick that he didn't do anything to it, so it still held its heat. I hold this to a higher accountability is every Rambo movie he's forging. How many Rambos is there? Like 5 Rambos? Like, how has no one been like, hey buddy, you absolutely suck, you should not do those scenes anymore, or go take one lesson to do it? I give it a 1. Rambo. Like, I love the movie, I just don't like the forging scene. Edge to edge. But at least they took the handle off on this one. Some of them are pinned and a lot of them are through, and then the pommel is what holds it on. But you definitely can't just take it and be like, and then it comes off. You know what I mean? So when you're melting steel in like an open face crucible like that they were doing, somehow the sword is melting on a black surface, which is the most ridiculous thing ever. Swords that were poured and casted like that were bronze. They weren't steel. It takes about 3,000 degrees to melt steel, that kind of steel. Bronze is a lower melting temperature, and so that was a lot easier to melt and cast. But when they do cast it, it wasn't in an open face. On both sides was it casted so that you pour it in the top and it fills up and makes a perfect mold. The sword would look like a cookie on a baking sheet, you know? So that's just bullshit. I don't quite understand how they got one sword and melted it, and you somehow made enough to make two swords now. You actually lose mass as you melt steel like that. I would definitely give that a 4. The thing that I did like about this scene is that they had it actually in a cast, like in a mold, and he was breaking the mold out of it. There's many different techniques. You can cast an axe because it's generally not made out of very great steel because it needs to take a lot of abuse, versus like a chef knife has to be the highest quality of carbon steel because it needs to be razor sharp. Axes are brute, that force that needs to be tough versus razor sharp. I've never seen a steel butt forge weld like that in one hit, and it wasn't hot enough. And if you ever put wood next to something that hot, it would disintegrate. You don't hold it to such a high accountability because it's not real. A tree dude is giving his arm for a handle. I mean, you can't take it too seriously. I don't understand why he didn't just cast it in one, but there's no way you could forge weld something like that. 6, I don't know. For all his big muscles, and I love Mark Wahlberg, but at the rate he's swinging, it would take him 3 days to draw that steel out without any breaks. Like literally, it would take him 3 days at that hammer swing. It's the weakest swing I mean, it's pretty bad. He loves the hole too. You see him hitting it on the hole? Like they all love that hole. Nobody wears a glove on their hammer hand, ever. Because it's dangerous to hold a hammer in that hand with a glove because it will just fly out of your hand. But like if you are gonna wear gloves in a blacksmith shop, they need to be a glove that you can shake like this and they fly off. Because once that leather gets so hot, it will cook your hand eternally within seconds. Like you see people freak out and they can't get the glove off, it will like cook your hand like an oven.
Are there things you just know how to do?
Right there, you see, generally you don't quench finished forged blades that look like a road going up to a mountain. That thing curvy as crooked as can be. Once it quenches like that, it's done. Like you'll have to slowly take the word, like nobody ever would quench a crooked blade. 2, he's only heating the tip. So like basically he's heating this much right here. So only this part of the blade would be hot. This would all be soft and it would catch a bend, it would catch a warp. Traditionally in Japanese weapons, the blade is straight as forged. There's a clay on the back to prevent the spine from getting hard. So it protects it from the heat. And then only the edge is exposed. The edge is getting hard, and that's what creates the natural curvature of a samurai sword. So you do not go in all bent and crooked, for 1, and 2, you don't forge the bend in, it's actually quenched, and through the heat treating process does the blade bend. This is the best part of all time where he cuts his steel pipe. Swords do not cut pipe. People think that samurai swords are the baddest things in the planet, and they are for their time. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it was the toughest and that it can cut through cement and cut through. No, they were actually, some of them had a lot of mild steel in them. A lot of them caught bends, broke. And I mean, this movie is about him doing it traditional, right? That's not how traditional Japanese bladesmiths test a finished product. And they are a culture so based out of respect. You're not supposed to even touch the steel with your hand. They would not take it and hit a pipe with it. It's just, it would be the ultimate disrespect for them. I'll give him a 2. If you look at the first initial scene, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces of broken sword. And then when they go to put it back together, it's only 2 pieces. So flux it's like borax. So basically as it heats, it's almost like melted glass that kind of cleans it so that it allows it to stick together. As you're forging something on a flat surface and you're hitting it with a hammer, it would never maintain that fuller. And the fuller is that like curved, spot down the middle of the blade. It's on both sides, so as you hit it, it would just flatten it out. The correct way to fix a broken blade like this would be to take the handle and the guard off, cut it up into smaller pieces, add more material, and forge weld it again and forge a new blade if you want to keep the same steel. You can just tell by their swing that they've never touched a hammer in their life, and it's not nearly hot enough to just butt weld a forged blade together. To forge weld, it's at 2300. It's a brighter color. It's not orangey and like it's white. 6 because they were actually forcing air into a coal forge. They were putting flux on there to try and forge weld it. So once again, another open face mold. And then he forges it. I have no idea what he's doing or what kind of oil they put on there to make it do that. They're putting either grease or wax or oil, and they're putting it on the hammer so it creates this whole fire. But they don't care about whether or not the steel was actually hot enough or where he's hitting it on the anvil. Look at this, just the tip is hot, look. And then we're gonna quench this sword into snow. Oh Lord. So what happens is when you take a sword like this and you quench it into oil, the reason why they move it up and down as they're quenching it is because what it does is it's so hot, it creates a vapor jacket that comes around it. And so it's boiling all around it, so it's vapor. So you're not actually rapid cooling it unless you're introducing it into new oil, right? So quenching it into snow, it would just instantly melt around it and then not touch it at all. And I still sharpen knives on a stone too. Maybe not a stone like that, but I mean, they probably just picked it up and was like, I don't know. I would rate that a 5 just because it was from the 80s and they didn't know any better. As she's hitting the anvil, she's like, tap, tap, then hits the anvil. Like, you're not even swinging it that hard. You don't need to pump your brakes. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. If you ever see a video of me forging, I'm swinging a 3 to 5 pound hammer, and yes, sometimes when I move the blade, I have to keep my hand continuing to swing. I don't understand how she's engraving with a nail. It's like a log cabin nail. So this right here is my forging stamp. It's done hot, and it's pressed in. I just hit it with a hammer. Yeah, I give it a 4. It wasn't hot enough at all, like to forge weld. You know, and that's basically what they're trying to replicate as you're forging it and you keep folding it, it takes out the impurities. They're trying to hit it and they can't even keep it on the anvil. But how they turn that little puck into a 1/2 inch thick plate with perfect square edges when they swing a hammer like that is beyond me. And so why make a plate that's bigger than the anvil, right? You can't forge weld it. Look at it, it's just rocking on its own. You only want to open it so much to fold it. Because how would you create enough even pressure to forge weld that together? You would hit it here and then it would forge weld here and then break loose here. You would hit it here. You want constant pressure of reduction. I would rate this a 3. I don't have a favorite of any of them. I don't think movies in itself have ever captured it. It's just annoying because it affects me. They're like, all you do is pour the knife, it's not that hard. And I'm like, I swing a hammer for a living. I sacrifice my body to swing a hammer. They think I just pour it in a mold, you know? So hopefully now this gets enough exposure where they might actually do a good one. And if you enjoy this video, you should click right here to see the next video.